It's just a thrill to have everyone joining us. So just give you another minute or so to get set up, and then we'll kind of get things rolling here. And I'm very excited about the schools that we have and some of the representatives that have come along to talk about all things essays. I know that many of you, again, are working on your essays and in need of help, in need of tips. So stay tuned here. We're going to get into it. I think we should probably just get rolling. I see it's a few minutes now past the top of the hour. So again, welcome. This is an application insight event run by ClearAdmit. I'll just give you a quick background about myself, and then I want to introduce our panelists. So I'm Graham Richmond. I'm the co-founder of ClearAdmit, and I don't really need to say too much else. I think I just, I'm going to try to get out of the way mostly today and let our panelists kind of share insights about their business schools. But for those of you joining, ClearAdmit's just an MBA applicant community. We have a website. You can hang out with other candidates, learn all about MBA admissions. And so let's get into the intros, though. I wanted to welcome first Lisa Killingsworth, who's Director of Operations at Cornell's SC Johnson College of Business. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk about essays and answer your questions later on in our breakout room. A little quick tidbit about me. I have been with Johnson for almost 3 years. My role can be very behind the scenes, but I also sit on the admission committee. So looking forward to answering your questions and providing some insight into that process, especially as it relates to essays. Thank you.
Great. Welcome, Lisa. So next up, we have Felicia Swoop, who's Assistant Director of Admissions at Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. Welcome, Felicia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Felicia Swoop. I've been at Tuck for almost 2 years now, and most of my tenure there, unfortunately, has been during the pandemic, but happy to be here, excited to meet you all to answer your questions. I can say that I lived in Hanover for a total of 7 years because I did my undergraduate time at Dartmouth. So at any time, if you would love to hear one day about what it's like to live in Hanover, I'm happy to tell you. Just again, happy to be here. And this is actually my favorite part of the application, the essays.
Excellent. All right, next up, we've got Allison Jameson, who's Assistant Dean of Admissions for full-time programs at Duke's Fuqua School of Business. Welcome, Allison.
Hi, thank you, Graham. I'm excited to be here. And my name is Allison Jameson, Assistant Dean of Admissions. I've been at Fuqua just over 15 years. It was 15 years in January. So I've been in admissions the whole time. Really enjoy it. I agree with Felicia. This is my favorite part of the application. So really looking forward to talking about the essays today and addressing your questions. And I'll reiterate the thanks to everybody for joining us today.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. It's great. Let's move on. We've got Diana Economy, who's the Director of Full-Time MBA Admissions at Michigan's Ross School of Business. Welcome, Diana.
Thanks, Graham. Good to be here with all of you today. Diana Economy, and in addition to being the Director of Admissions at Michigan Ross, I'm also an alum of the MBA program. So I remember being where you are. I remember thinking about what I wanted to share in my essays and how to leverage the essays to be successful in the admissions process. So looking forward to sharing more with you today.
Great. Excellent. Welcome. And then last but not least, we've got Rodrigo Malta, who's the Managing Director of MBA Admissions over at UT Austin, Texas McCombs School of Business. Welcome, Rodrigo.
Thank you, Graham. And hi, everybody. My name is Rodrigo Malta. I'm here with Texas McCombs. I'm the Managing Director of MBA Recruitment Admissions. I'm also a grad of the MBA program back in the class of 2007. So it's been a little while, but happy to share my experiences both on the admissions side of the house and as a student back when I was in your shoes. I want to say hello to my colleagues too. Really excited to be on the panel with all of you. And let's get this party started.
Yeah.
So, one thing, I also go by Digo, D-I-G-O. So if you hear people say Digo, I'm Brazilian, so I have a very appropriate Brazilian 4-letter nickname. So Rodrigo or Diego is just fine.
All right. Well, welcome, Diego. Thanks for making time. And yeah, this is great. I think we should get moving because we have an all-star panel here. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So the first thing I wanted to ask, and I think what we'll do is we'll just start with Lisa. So we'll just go alphabetically by school name. I want to know, Lisa, like when do you or your colleagues read the essays in an application? And how much time in total do you spend reading an application? And I do want to stress that I think most of our folks who've tuned in understand that more than one person reads their application. So let's just talk about a single sitting, a single read for the purposes of this conversation. So walk us through this, Lisa.
Yeah, so our process involves ensuring that we're reading and commenting on each piece of the application that you've either uploaded something for, written an essay about, or provided any additional information in the application form. So we're looking at everything that you enter. When we begin reading your application, we start with your background. So we're looking at transcripts, resume, things like that. Then we move into your goals and what you're hoping to do kind of following the MBA. And then we look at your essays from there. And are then moving on to some of your affiliations and community engagement, recommendations, things like that. So the essays kind of come in the middle of our application. I'm so sorry, my dog is barking in the background, part of the the work from home life. But yeah, I would say as far as how much total time we spend, reading an application, it really varies. We have a few, optional essays within our application too. So sometimes it can look a little different depending on what applicants choose to complete, to choose to upload, how much information they provide. I would say on average, we spend about 30 minutes reading an application. And I think essays can be interesting because often there's a perception that maybe we're not reading them fully. I mean, we are picking through that, and it's one of our favorite areas to read. So I'm really glad that we're having this session today, so people get to hear from us about that.
Excellent. All right, so let's go over to Felicia. I'm kind of curious to know, how about you? When do you read the essays in an application? And again, how much time do you think you spend reading a file?
So I am probably a newer reader than a lot of my experienced colleagues here. So I usually take about 45 minutes to read an application. My colleagues will definitely say 30 minutes, but for me, it's about 45 minutes. And I probably read my essays second to last, right before I read the letters of recommendation. So I like to gather all the data about an applicant first, and then get to the creative part, which is the most exciting part for me. So I really save the essays until last because it's the most fun and the most revealing about the applicant.
And do you have a sense of how much time you're spending when you read a file?
Definitely about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, great. Allison, how about at Fuqua? How do you guys do it?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I was thinking about this, about when I read the essays. So I'll read sort of the background of your demographic information and where you live and what work you've done and where you went to undergrad. And I kind of look at that as like setting the table, and then the essays are the meal. Like that's what I'm anxious to get to, because that's where I feel like we really get to know you. So you sort of set the background with what you've done in your education and professional life, and then we get to hear from you to really put your story together. So it's kind of in the middle, I think, as far as, because we'll all look at the recommendations and the interview after that. So really it's the meat of the application, in my opinion. And I think similar to Felicia and what Lisa said, it's going to depend a little bit on what the applicant chose to include and how long someone has been reading. But I would say in general, you're probably looking about 30 to 45 minutes per application.
Okay, great. How about you, Diana? How do things work at Ross?
Yeah, similar to Allison, you're kind of getting the background detail first. So I will tell you that the very first thing I take a look at is your resume. I realize this is an essay workshop, but the thing I think candidates overlook the most is their resume. You're not, making a deep judgment as you're looking at that resume at first, but you are getting a snapshot of who that candidate is, because the resume is going to show you, what they studied in school, what their career trajectory has been, some of the things that make that candidate stand out. And I find that sometimes the essays might be building off of something that's popped up on that resume too. So not always, right, in terms of the content that people choose to share, but certainly the career goals essay is going to be a reflection on where have you been and where are you going, right? So, so that's why the essays come sort of shortly after I've gotten a sense for who you are based on the resume and some of the background information, as Allison mentioned. What I would tell you is that it probably takes about a half an hour or so to read an application. But as Graham mentioned, multiple people are reading your application. And so your essays are seen more than once and maybe in short order before your interview invitation and in a little bit more depth a little bit later as we're finalizing our recommendations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, yeah, it's really important for folks to know that applications get multiple reads. And so I know candidates are like, oh, I spent 40 hours working on my application to get it into a school, and then it's read in like 30 minutes, but it's read multiple times. So keep that in mind, everybody. Let's move on. Diego, how about you? How do things work over at McCombs in this respect?
Yeah, very similar to what my colleagues have shared so far. I would say that the reads take 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the information provided by the applicant, but then also the experience of the reader themselves. I personally like to start with the resume. So similar to Diana, kind of looking, and what Allison also mentioned, like the setting of the table with background information that's supplied in the application itself. And then leaving the yummy stuff, which is the MBA essays and the interviews and the letter recommendation last. Though I have to say that I do like a little variety. Variety is the spice of life. So sometimes I shift things around if things are getting maybe a little bit tedious. So sometimes I may start at the end, but I think, Graham, what you mentioned is key. The application itself will get multiple touches. And I also maybe demystify something. It's not bad if somebody just spends 30 minutes on your application. If you are answering the questions directly, providing the information in the order that we're asking for, the read can be really expedited, and it actually can be a really pleasant experience when the reader is reading and everything clicks. You're like, all right, you're connecting the dots for me. The next question that I have, you're already answering, and the read just flows beautifully. It may not be a great idea for somebody to be spending an hour on your application, because it might mean that you're not properly connecting the dots and we're playing detective a little too much. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a key lesson that we often come back to. This, like, you don't want the admissions reader to play detective, like you said. Like, ideally, they can sort of figure out where everything's headed and where you've been, et cetera, without having to kind of find these missing pieces in the puzzle. So let's move on to the second part of today's session, where essentially we're going to turn the floor over to each school that's represented here. And we're going to start with Cornell. And the idea is we're going to put your essays questions up on screen. And the idea is for you to speak to one of the required essay questions that your school has. And what we want to know is, how did your team decide, to ask this question? And maybe how does the prompt reflect your program's values? And what is the, the applicant essay, in this case, tell you about the candidacy? And if you have any advice for applicants as they're drafting the essay that you're going to talk about. So we'll give each school just a few minutes to walk us through, and we'll start with you, Lisa. So maybe pick one of these and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I would love to talk about our impact essay. This year, we have decided that the only required essay within our application is the impact essay. So this is the essay, if you choose to apply to Cornell Johnson, that you will be filling out. We love this essay. We every single year talk about if we want to make any adjustments, and every year we're like, no, this is perfect. We love it. So really, I think, kind of what this essay speaks to as far as what's important to us at Johnson. We have a smaller program. We enroll about 280 students a year. So we have a community in which you have an opportunity to lead, to make an impact, to create something new, to contribute. And our essay is designed to get at that a little bit and see another side of you outside of your transcript, outside of your resume, and hear a little bit about, not only maybe what you're passionate about, but how you plan to kind of bring that to our community at Johnson. So that's part of this essay. We're really looking to see, have you looked into our community? Are there things that you've been able to pull either from events you've attended or research that you've done through conversations with current students or faculty or alumni that really speak to you about our program and it's something that you connect with. So that's another thing that we do like to see within this essay is students who've done a little bit of research. Reason being is we really want students who want to be at Johnson. So we love to see students who've taken that step and have engaged with our community in some way. It really shows your interest. It shows a little bit more about your fit within our community. So those are things that we really love to see. And outside of that, you don't necessarily have to attend a bunch of events. You don't have to visit campus. I know those things are challenging right now anyways, as it is. You don't necessarily have to email every single student or alumni available to you, but at least showing that, you've drawn a line to your experience and some of the things that you want to do while you're at Johnson is really helpful to us in seeing, a little bit more about you and who you are as a person. So we love this essay, and I think it shows that we're really looking for you to answer this directly as it relates to Johnson.
Okay, excellent. So I want to ask you kind of a follow-up question. I think obviously the advice you're giving here is really useful for candidates as they approach this essay. I did want to mention that there is like a short answer, I would almost call it, in the data form or the application form that people fill out for Johnson, where you have this kind of like fill in the blank about career goals, right? And you ask people to put in their role, company, and industry or something, right? So in terms of like thinking about what they want to do. And I wanted to just know, like, what's the rationale, for doing it that way? Because it's really interesting and it's very specific. And also, like, what would you say to a candidate who like isn't really sure? They have maybe a few different ideas of paths that they could see themselves taking. What would you say to someone as they approach that piece of your application?
Yeah, certainly interesting. We've been making some updates to our application for this upcoming year, and that is something we're still really fighting to keep, is this sort of fill in the blank industry function within your areas of goals. The reason being is we really want our applicants to be thinking about what is it that I want to do in the short term as far as my role, my industry, what sort of function do I hope to have? We're hoping that students are really thinking about potential target companies for recruitment. We really want to begin that conversation in the application and have students be thinking about that. We think that a student is really successful when they come to Johnson, when they've got some sort of idea of what they're hoping to get from the MBA. So we just want students to be starting to think about that early in the process. That doesn't mean you have to stick to that. It doesn't mean that it can't change. It doesn't mean that you can't explore other things. We just really are hoping to use that also as a jumping off point. If you're invited to interview, we will be asking you about that as well. So it's really more to have students begin to kind of organize what that might look like for them.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you're sort of underlining, which is that it's an exercise to sort of figure out like what is a potential path. And I think that even if someone shifts paths when they get to business school, the act of having figured out a possible path makes it easier to then come up with a second path or kind of pivot a little bit. So really good exercise, I think. Excellent. Thanks for all that insight. Let's move on. We're going to hear a little bit from Felicia. And talk a little bit about Tuck. So Felicia, you heard me kind of describe the rules here. Pick one of your essays, introduce us to it, tell us where it came from, how it reflects maybe your program values, how you read it, what you're looking for, and maybe any tips for the candidate that's setting out to write the essay that you choose to feature here.
Sure. So I will pick essay 1, where we ask you why Tuck and why MBA. What I love about our application is that it really maps a pathway to figuring out whether or not you fit into our 4 criteria of being smart, accomplished, aware, and encouraging. And essay 1, where we ask you to just elaborate on why you're planning to pursue the MBA right now, and specifically why Tuck, speaks to your awareness, not only about yourself. It shows that you've done some sort of self-introspection and really thought about, why do I want the MBA at this point in my career? And specifically, why are you selecting this unique environment of Tuck, this school that's in the middle of the mountains where lots of people ski and hike and are very, very connected. It's a small environment, only about 300 students. And if you feel the need to list a number of activities and the number of students that the names of the students that you've met and the professors, it really isn't necessary. You don't need to make lists. We're looking for something a little more in depth. Speak to, if you've spoken to 10 students, what have you taken from those conversations? What have you gathered from those students about this unique environment and their experiences that might match some of your goals? So that's really essay 1.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. And I think, yeah, it's great because I have some questions about the other 2
Yes, yes.
that I wanted to ask. So let's focus on the second essay.
Okay.
I think, it's interesting because it's a really open-ended question, right? Tell us who you are. And I wondered if you have advice as to like whether or not should applicants hone in on like one specific aspect of their background versus aiming to like provide sort of an overview of all the different things that make them unique and, in a kind of, that highlight that individuality. So do you have any advice on that? I mean, I guess it could probably work both ways, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure, it can work both ways. And in the past 2 seasons, we've seen both. But I think this year, we're honing more in on asking students to focus on one experience so that you can go in depth in that short word count of 300 words and really reveal something unique about yourself that we can grasp onto and to help us really to make a judgment about whether or not you're a fit for our environment. So I would say focus on one aspect of yourself that is unlike anyone else. And even if there's something about you that is similar to other people, there's still something very unique and special that we would absolutely love to know about you. And really take time, take a moment to just brainstorm about your personality, about your journey, about your interaction with others. There's so many different ways to approach it. There is no wrong answer. And we are just looking for an opportunity to get to know you, to have you just sort of jump off of the page. It doesn't have to be a creative writing project, but just something that really reveals you. Again, in our small environment where people are very connected and personal and have lots of personal interactions, people will want to get to know you. And this is the first step toward that. If it's not something that you're normally comfortable with, take a moment to just really think about yourself, your pathway, and what makes you unique.
Okay, yeah, that's great advice because I know that 300 word, maximum, like I think it's great that someone could just pick one thing and focus in on it. If you don't mind, I'd love just a really brief response on this other essay. I have a question about it. So it talks about, students being encouraging, collaborative, and empathetic. And then it asks, to sort of describe an experience where somebody exemplified one or more of those attributes. But it also has this kind of second piece where it says, even when it's not convenient or easy. And I was wondering if what if someone has a great example of a time where they were encouraging or collaborative or empathetic, but it wasn't necessarily difficult to do so, or does it have to be a situation where it wasn't convenient or easy, or can they talk about something where they just exhibited one of those traits?
No, it's really, again, it's completely up to you. It doesn't have to be difficult. Some people find being encouraging and empathetic very easy. Some people don't. It really depends on you and your own unique personality. It's completely open. We want you to be comfortable sharing what you're comfortable with sharing, if that makes sense. And we're not looking for you to fit into a box of having difficult experiences and sharing them with the admissions officers. It is completely up to you. It's very easy for some people to be empathetic and encouraging. And if that's you, then share it in your essay.
Okay, Great. Thanks for addressing that. I was curious about that. Let's move on. Allison, at Fuqua, can you introduce us to one of your essays and yeah, just tell us a little bit about, and I think we have there might be another page here too. So whichever one you decide to talk about,
Yeah.
maybe we've got them all on one page. I can't remember, but yeah, just take us through one of them.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about the one that you have displayed right now, which is our 25 random things essay. And it is one, to your origin question, that that we added way back in, I think it was 2006, because there was actually an exercise going around Facebook at the time when people still used Facebook Notes for people to share these lists. And we did that in our office. And even people who had worked together for a very long time were like, I did not know that about you. And so we thought, you know, that would be great to ask this of our applicants. And so we really are asking for a numbered list, 1 through 25. And I think it's a great essay. Everybody loves it. We haven't changed it since whatever it was, 2006 or 7, because it's a free form in that you will see all kinds of creative responses. You'll see people who maybe use the number to relate to the fact that they're going to tell us, you know, 1, the number of times I've jumped out of an airplane, things like that. I actually had someone this year, it was really interesting. He polled 50 people and picked, like, it looked like a Family Feud board. You know, number 1 was 47 people agree that this is what I'm like, and gave us some stories from that. So you really do have this opportunity to be very creative and be very, very free form, and you can really show your personality. And I think that's what really ties in to the Team Fuqua ethos is, you know, our dean talks about IQ, EQ, and DQ, with DQ being the decency quotient. And what that means is, are you somebody that we want to spend our time with? Are you somebody who wants to get to know others, who wants to influence positively the world around you? And that can really come through in this essay in particular, because you have so much room and flexibility. You know, I think sometimes people get a little intimidated and will say, gosh, I mean, I haven't climbed Mount Everest. I haven't run off and join the Moscow Circus, which one of our applicants did do one year. But I actually pulled some examples because we had asked some of our readers this year, what are ones that jumped out at you? And so I'll just share one. And this is what I mean about how you can really learn from somebody. So the response was, one of their things, when I started college, I was painfully shy. To push myself out of my comfort zone, my freshman year, I ran for a student government position and I won. Campaigning and debating my opponent gave me a newfound confidence. So this not only tells me something about your personal life, it tells me about your motivation, it tells me about your willingness to challenge yourself, your willingness to rise to the occasion, and you have like 25 snippets just like that. So it's a really, really fun essay to read, and I think I can safely say that for the entire admissions team, this is the one essay that everybody really, really looks forward to. And I think you really do finish that essay feeling like you know that person. And students have the option to include pictures, you can include links to videos. So it really is whatever you want to make it.
Yeah, it's a really fun exercise. And spoiler alert, we're going to do a little something like this later in this session. But I think it's a really interesting question. I think we have the second essay somewhere in the deck here. I don't know if it can be, there we go. So I did want to ask you a question about this one, where, you know, this is a great opportunity for candidates to sort of think about what they're going to do as a student, you know, at Fuqua. And I just wondered, to what extent, how would you advise someone who's trying to get a feel for the culture, given that it's harder to get to campus now because of, you know, even though I know, you know, classes are going to be in person and everything, it sounds like with Fuqua and most schools, if not all schools, the class visit program is not going to be in place this fall still because of COVID and stuff. So just wondering, do you have any advice for someone who's really trying to envision themselves as a student who wants to dig in and figure out how they're going to get involved if they can't, you know, maybe come to campus and see this stuff in action?
Yeah, I think, you know, COVID and the innovations and the changes that we all had to make might have actually given people greater access because we had to move everything to be virtual and to be available online. So whereas you might not have been able in the past to attend an in-person event or something, pretty much everybody has virtually unlimited opportunity to join events. And we have expanded sort of the menu of the things that we offer in terms of regular sort of information sessions, of workshops, of student-led events, of alumni panels and things like that. So I think that there's actually a tremendous amount of resource out there. And I think that our community has proven to be very resilient over the past year, that you are still going to find people who are very willing to share experiences, to share, this is what we did pre-COVID. This is what we did during COVID. So I think the information definitely is there. I truly think that the challenge of this question is for all of us, I think there's so much information available that we're really asking you to do some primary research, talk to people, make these connections, attend these virtual events, and narrow it down to just 3 things that you are genuinely and authentically interested in. And that's going to demonstrate not only a level of interest, but also a level of self-awareness and reflection that you've identified these things that really fit with what you bring and what you're looking to develop.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that you kind of force people to just pick 3 things rather than, because you could get a real hodgepodge in 500 words. I mean, somebody could like throw out 10 different things. And
Right.
I know when you get to business school, you do often sign up to do 10 things at the beginning, but then by the time you graduate, you've probably really only focused on, 3 big things that you've made a
Right.
mark with. So
Right. You've got to
that's a great-
prioritize and allocate
yeah,
your time. Exactly.
great exercise. All right, well, thanks for those insights. Let's move on. Diana, would you be willing to take us through an essay of your choice from Michigan and, Ross, and how did it come to be? What are you looking for? And then, we'll just love to hear your thoughts on this.
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about those short answer essay prompts. You're going to choose one from group 1 and one from group 2 to share. The choice is very intentional. We heard from students who said, I don't feel like I got a chance to highlight this particular thing about me, or I wish the admissions committee would know a little bit more about this as it relates to me and my candidacy, what makes me tick. And so you'll see in each of the groups, you're going to have a choice as to what you tell us. So group 1, I want people to know that I made a difference when I was aware that I was different when. That's obviously getting to a little bit of your self-awareness, who you are. What are things that you think make you stand out or differentiated? Group 2, I was out of my comfort zone when, I was humbled when, I was challenged when. At Michigan Ross, if you learn best by doing, this is the place to be. You're going to have more hands-on learning experiences here than you will elsewhere. And what you'll find is in those hands-on learning experiences where you're trying something new, where you're practicing the skills that you're learning while you're in school, you're going to need to be outside of your comfort zone in order to do that. You're going to need to push yourself, and you'll be pushing others around you as well. But the good news is we work to wrap a very supportive community around that so that you feel comfortable being able to take those risks. But students are going to need to take on some of those new things to potentially fail, maybe learn from those mistakes, hopefully learn from those mistakes, or build from those and be stronger going forward. So this is taking a look at where those types of things have happened in the past to you and what you've learned from them. What I will tell you is between these groups, it does not have to be professional examples. You're certainly welcome to expand upon a professional example, but we also welcome you to share a personal example. From a professional perspective, we have a little bit more about that in your recommendation letter, your resume, that might come up in your interview. So again, certainly you're welcome to expand upon a professional experience that you think fits the description well or something that you want to share with us, but don't be shy about sharing something that might be personal as well.
Okay, yeah, great advice. I guess because you talked about the groups, I want to talk about SA2, which on the surface, I mean, I think many schools, including many that are with us today, have a question about one's career plans. What I want to call attention to is that you have a 200-word maximum, so it's quite short. So I just wondered, do you have any advice as to what someone should prioritize as they approach this, given the word count?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it is a short word count. And I will tell you that before we had more words, but we asked essentially, why, what are you interested in the short term? What are you interested in the long term? And why Michigan Ross? And what we got with that is differing amounts of real estate that people would use to answer those various questions. And largely people would spend a lot of time talking about why Ross. And so we actually felt that the why Ross actually appears better in the interview because it gives people a more authentic opportunity to explain, their interest in Ross. Now, don't worry. I know not everybody gets an interview. I will say that the short answer prompts also give us some insight into your fit. There's a place in the application where you can put how you've gotten to know Michigan Ross. It's not about tallying the number of events. Please attend the ones that are most meaningful for you. But there are other ways that we get to understand your fit, even without you directly articulating it in an essay. So for the short-term career goal essay, we're looking for just that. Where do you want to start this next step? What we find is that even over this summer, as we have students starting in Ann Arbor this fall, we have done a substantial amount over the last few months to help people prepare for their internship search next summer. So they haven't even come to Ann Arbor yet. We're already working with them on trying to focus where they want their internship search to start, where they want that to go, what that might look like for them. So this short-term career goals essay is an opportunity for you to say, here's where I think I want to start. Right? Here's the research that I've done. Here's what I think. Here's what I believe to be true about where I am right now and what's going to make sense for me in the short term. You don't have to address why Ross in this essay. Sometimes people do. It might be a sentence or so just to highlight a particular point, but we're not expecting it to see it there. The last thing I'll say in terms of the word count is when we've had a longer word count, while yes, I think it feels like you can have more flexibility, we weren't given that much more in 300 words, let's say, than we were in 200. So while it does force you to get right to the point, I think it should be sufficient for you to be able to articulate the key points for us in your essay.
Great advice. I think, the other thing that you kind of called our attention to is that, this is a very specific question around short-term career goal and why. You're not asking, like you said, why Ross specifically, or even the long-term plan. And so I think I would encourage candidates, if you agree, Diana, to make sure they're realizing that you're not asking what some other schools are asking, which is for a long-term goal, or because you see candidates sometimes shoehorn stuff in to an essay prompt that they've written elsewhere, or so I think, yeah, if everyone pays attention to the exact nature of the question being asked and the word count, it's probably very doable, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
all right, thanks for shedding light there. Diego, you've been very patient. Sorry that your school kind of begins with the letter U if we use University of Texas. So you're at the end of the list here, but let's get into your essays. Maybe pick one, introduce us to it, tell us sort of where it came from, what you look for. Yeah, and any advice you have for someone who's going to tackle it.
Awesome. No, I think patience is one of my strong suits, so no problem at all. I've really enjoyed listening to my colleagues share a little bit about what they look for in their essays as well. The essay that I'll pick is essay number 2, which is our longer essay, though both are fairly short. So essay number 2, picture yourself at the completion of your MBA journey. Describe how you spent your time as a Texas McCombs MBA student to achieve your personal and professional goals. So this is our spin on that why an MBA. And what the team was looking for here is really give you an opportunity to be a little creative. There is a little bit of a visioning exercise built in there. And I know that the application process can be really stressful as you're putting yourself out there. But our hopes, one of our hopes was that this essay would give you an opportunity to look at yourself at the end of the journey and really vision yourself at graduation, walking across the stage and seeing all that you have accomplished and how you have grown both professionally and personally. So we wanted to tap into that creative skill a little bit, that visioning exercise. And what we look for here is a balance of the personal and professional aspects of your background and how you're looking to grow into those. And then throughout the essay, really demonstrate your research on Texas McCombs specifically, and why this is the place for you to pursue your MBA studies. The transformative growth that happens in all the MBA programs that are represented here does not happen in a vacuum. It is going to be professional growth and personal growth. So we wanted to see that balance. One thing that I'll highlight that we see when we see successful essay answers to this essay prompt, the students are sharing a little bit of their kind of the personal side and the professional side, and they're sharing information about the resources at Texas McCombs that they'll take advantage of. But then the other side of the coin is also important. So how are you contributing to our community, right? What do you bring to the table? How are you going to leave this place better than you found it? So finding that right balance of personal, professional, give and take is really what we're looking for here. And we hope that you have as much fun writing this essay as we have reading it.
Excellent. Yeah, I love these more, these kind of creative exercises. We've seen, every school seems to have one kind of, I wouldn't say fun, because I know applicants are cringing when I say fun because they're in the midst of putting this all together, but it's still, some of these exercises are really interesting. This picture yourself at the completion of your journey. So I love it. I do want to ask you a question about the first essay. And it's really simple. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit perhaps, but I wanted to know, you have this option where it could be either a video that someone submits or an essay. And I was kind of wondering, like, what do you normally see? Like, what percentage of people are doing a video versus an essay? And I know that you guys are totally agnostic about what, whether someone does one or the other, but I'm just kind of curious, like, what are people doing? And do you have any advice on this one?
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that essay as well. We see between 25 and 35% of the applicant pool submit a video. So the majority of the applicants are submitting a written answer to that essay prompt. You are completely right, Graham. We do not have a preference on how you answer the prompt. We are interested in the content, not necessarily kind of the communication channel that you choose. What I will advise applicants is to pick the communication channel that you feel most comfortable in. So if you're an amazing writer, go all in on that written essay. 250 words is not a lot, and it's going to take some skills to get your message across. If you are a video first type of person, and I think have all become a little bit better at video over the past year and a half. So if you are more comfortable in the camera, by all means, do something different, do the video introduction. But it's, again, up to you. The one thing that I'll say is this essay is probably not a great time for you to maybe do something new or try something new. So I would, stick with what works. So if you're, again, a great writer, write the essay. If you love to be on camera, do the video.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. I do agree. Yeah, people are getting better at video. I still prefer podcasting or things like that, but I know that we're all getting better at being in front of a camera. So we have about 15 minutes left, and I have some fun kind of lightning round type questions that I wanted to ask all of you to respond to. And again, just so that everyone who's tuned in understands, at the conclusion of this, each school is going to jump into an individual Zoom breakout room. We're going to provide you with the links. You'll get both an email, and we'll put them in the chat here so that you can jump in and join the schools. We're not giving them to you right away because we're going to give the schools a few minutes after we conclude here to get themselves over into their Zoom rooms and be set up so that you're not kind of arriving just as they're kind of getting into the room. So hang in there, and you'll get the individual links a little bit later. And before we do that, we have just a few more questions to help shed some further insights on the essay questions that these schools ask, and even just on their communities. So we're going to start with this one about kind of the community. And Diego, I want to stay with you. We'll just go backwards through the group here since you were so patient earlier. Describe the McCombs MBA student community in 3 words.
I would say collaborative, curious, and authentic.
Okay. Diana, how about you?
I would say authentic, inclusive, and driven.
Okay. Allison, how about at Fuqua?
I think I would say resilient, supportively ambitious, which I'm going to put that together and cheat a little bit, and then decent, the high DQ.
Okay, we allow hyphenated words. Like
excellent.
You can do that. All right, Felicia, how about at Tuck?
I would say collaborative, driven, and adventurous.
Okay, that's a good word for the mountains of New Hampshire. All right, Lisa, how about at Cornell?
I would say approachable, genuine, and collaborative.
Okay, so collaborative is a common word we're hearing across all of you. I think that's great. I think, all these leading business programs are, that's the purpose of it in some ways, is this ability to connect with others in your class and work together to solve problems and things. So let's move on to the next lightning round question. I know we've talked about essays extensively, and so I wanted to purposely ask each of you to kind of take us through one piece of advice you have that's not essay related. And so we'll start with you, Lisa. So is there any advice you'd have for someone looking at Johnson who, that's not related to the essay portion of the application?
Yeah, I think this is really generic and can apply to just about any MBA you might be applying for, but being genuine throughout your application is going to get you pretty far. We're going to have a good insight into who you are as a person, what you want to do, and how you fit with our school. So as you're filling your application, be true to yourself. You don't have to be anybody that you're not. Great
advice. And I think it's, one thing that's great about that is it's a lot easier to be yourself and to be authentic than it is to like kind of concoct some sort of like messaging and stuff, right? So great advice. Let's go to you, Felicia. Any advice you have that's not essay related?
Definitely, I would say have an incredible amount of faith in yourself and your journey, and just know that what you have to offer is more than enough. And we are excited about you. And again, just have an incredible amount of faith in yourself because you are enough.
Okay, excellent advice. Allison, how about you?
I think I'll go with something that's actually very tactical, and a place where someone can inadvertently introduce questions into their own candidacy. But as you're filling out the forms that we ask you to for employment and things like that, make sure that matches what you've put in your resume and mentioned in your essays, because it can be very confusing if you just mistype a year and we're like, wait, was that person unemployed for 2 years? Did they type it wrong? What has happened there? So you're creating questions that don't necessarily need to be there. So just double check those dates.
Yeah, and that actually goes back to something that Diego was saying earlier about you don't want the admissions reader to have to play detective as they go through your file. And I also think I actually just recorded a podcast the other day where we were talking about the application forms and how a lot of candidates, I think they focus so much on essays and picking the recommenders and maybe even the interview process, but then they kind of leave the data forms to the end, and then they're taken by surprise that they have all this stuff to fill out and that they need to follow specific instructions that often vary from school to school. So terrific advice. Thanks for for sharing that. Diana, how about you? What's one piece of non-essay advice?
Yeah, one thing I would say is there are so many ways in this virtual world to be able to get to know schools, and it's almost a little bit overwhelming. So you've got the virtual events themselves, but you've got various other ways. We've got a great student podcast called Business Beyond Usual. We have got a number of student ambassadors, 200 to 300. We've got hour-long webinars where you can learn about, why Michigan Ross for healthcare or more, consulting tech. So lots of different ways that you can get to know schools remotely. So build in some time, right? Are you going to spend your Saturday, recognizing that you can build that time around your, usually your own schedule, because a lot of it's recorded and sort of on demand for you. So do take advantage of the set of resources and find the resources that are going to help you better understand against your personal goals. And what I would say when connecting with student ambassadors at any school is keep track of the folks that you're talking to and really the way that you're feeling or reflecting as a result of that conversation. That kind of feel is when we talk about fit, that's what you're going to go back to in a couple months in terms of, if you get into multiple schools, if you've talked to various people, you're going to try to weave that story together around where am I going to fit? Where am I going to thrive? And keeping track of those interactions, and specifically not just what you're hearing, but how you feel as a result of the conversation, can help.
Okay, so Diana, I want to put you on the spot because you just mentioned something that I think is really interesting. So this idea that there's a lot of stuff out there that's live, like what we're doing now, but then there also is a ton of information that's sort of on demand and is great for candidates because they can fit it into their schedule. They can watch a video, at midnight on a Saturday if that's how they want to spend their Saturday night, right? So, but what I wanted to ask you is, I feel like some candidates, maybe wrongfully so, feel like, oh, I've got to go to any kind of video I consume or event that I consume. I need to do it live because I'm somehow being counted as having shown up. And I want to kind of ideally dispel that myth. I mean, hopefully that. So can you speak to that? Just give us a sense of like, is it okay that someone's attending something that's just recorded and that they're,
100%, 100%. I can very much dispel the myth that we're counting and tracking and somehow saying you've attended 15 events and you've only attended 5. I mean, you really need to spend your time in the way that's going to be most useful for you. And if there's one thing we've learned is just how zoomed out everybody is, right?
Right.
And so, one of the series of events that we did, we called them 30-minute tips, and it was 30 minutes, and we didn't do Q&A because we knew we were going to record them, and we knew that 30 minutes was a more consumable amount of time. So we're actually expecting that many more people will see it in recording than attended it when we did it live, right? So it is okay to find the content that's going to be most meaningful for you as you build your application.
Yeah, and it sounds like you can note stuff that you've learned or people you heard speak that sort of really resonated with you, and then you can reference that in your application. It doesn't matter if you were there live or not. All right, so Diego, how about you? What's one piece of non-essay advice?
Oh, awesome advice so far from everybody. I will just add one more piece, which is activate your support network. What Felicia said really resonated with me with that encouragement that you are enough. You got it, you can do it. But all of us are human, and it's important to have that support group as well. So activate, be it individuals in your professional network, mentors. It can be some of our ambassadors that Diana talked about. All of our schools have amazing ambassadors that are happy to share their stories with you. You might be somebody in your personal life, family members, partners, significant others. So activate and bring them along in the journey, share what you're talking about, and don't discount the support group that you meet along the way. So fellow applicants that might engage either virtually or in person with you are a great resource to give you that extra kind of push when you're feeling maybe a little bit down.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and I really, I think all of you have just provided such great advice. And I know we were focused on essays, but I knew that if we asked this question, we might get some other good tidbits. So really appreciate it. The last thing we're going to do before I let you guys go and set up your individual breakout rooms is, in honor of Fuqua's question, I wanted each of you to share one random thing about yourself. So Diego, let's start with you. What's one random thing that we should know about you?
Oh my gosh. So I had two. So I had one that was more general and one that was a little more risque. And since I'm going first, I'm going to tell both because I didn't want to be like lame and like do something boring. So anyway, so my first one, so the boring ones, I'm a big fan of tacos and margaritas. So I'm in the right place being in Austin, Texas. But I feel like a lot of people like tacos and margaritas. So my more risque one was when I was young. I'm originally from Brazil. I actually won a lambada dancing contest. So
Wow.
yeah, and the dancing contest. So that
right.
is the more risque one.
All right, at a future industry conference, we're gonna see if you can actually demonstrate these dancing skills for us.
I have retired. I don't know that my hips move in that manner any longer.
All right, all right. Diana, how about you? What's one random thing that you'd want us to know about you?
My fun fact is that I miss having tacos and margaritas with Diego. I'm ready to go back to having tacos and margaritas. But no, this past year, I actually took advantage of the fact that we were working remotely, and I spent a month in Boulder, Colorado, a month in Hood River, Oregon, and a month in Saugatuck, Michigan. So if you're interested in any of those places and learning more about anything as it relates to monthly stays on Airbnb and how to negotiate the best discount.
Wow, that is awesome. That is so cool. Allison, how about you? This is unfair for you because this is your school's question, but okay, there's got to be something you can share though, right?
Well, I did think, okay, what's something I can share that isn't already on a blog or a website somewhere? So I thought in honor of the Olympics, I would share. When I was growing up, I took gymnastics lessons for 8 years and I never moved up a single class. And so I don't know if that is a tale of determination or complete lack of self-awareness or blind hope by my parents, but I still love gymnastics and I still cannot do a back handspring, but I did love it.
Got it. That's a timely one given that we've got Olympics coming here. So, all right, Felicia.
I'm going to add in two as well. I have never been able to do any type of backhand spring, forward roll, or anything in gymnastics. And I absolutely love gymnastics. But the real fun fact about me is that I spent most of my life being a modern dancer.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So, okay, so we're going to have to get you and Diego on the dance floor at the next, event, right?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Alicia, I think you'd school me. So I am I'm already like bowing out gracefully while I
Now I'm
dance.
totally down to embarrass myself. It's fine. Let's do it.
Lisa, how about you? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
I will share. A fun fact about me is that I actually live in Oahu, Hawaii. And my husband is active duty military. So I am deeply connected to our military community and applicants. Go Navy.
All right. So yeah, and actually special points to Lisa for being the one who got up probably earliest for this event today. I think that's probably a safe bet, right? Because Hawaii is very far west. So in any event, I would really love to thank each of you, Diego, Felicia, Diana, Lisa, Allison. Thank you so much for making time. We're going to let you guys disappear and get into your individual Zoom breakout rooms so you can welcome all the candidates who are here with us today who have questions for you. But yeah, thanks so much and hope to see you guys all really soon. So in the meantime, those of you who are tuned in here, we're going to get you the links. And while we let them set up, I'm just going to do a really quick admissions tip so that you have one more tidbit to walk away from this session with. I think if we could just advance the slide one forward, I don't know if we've got, because I did put the bullet points up on the deck. Here we go. So what I wanted to talk about was this kind of age-old debate between round one and round two, right? This is something that I think a lot of people think about, particularly in the summer as you begin writing your essays and getting your applications together. The thought crosses your mind that there's no way you're going to be able to get everything done. And so I would say, of course, all things being equal, earlier is better. So, at the beginning of the admissions process, you're competing with relatively fewer people for more seats in a class. I think it also signals that an MBA is a high priority for you. So earlier is better, but a well done round two application is obviously better than something that you throw together and hand in round one. And I also want to just point out that it doesn't have to be an either or type scenario. And I would argue that there are a lot of people who apply to some schools in round one and they kind of see where the chips are falling. And you do get some early indications from these schools because many of them are interview by invitation only. And so you start to get feedback. Like if you don't make the cut for an interview, then you might look at your school list and say, okay, I just got rejected without interview from a school that was sort of my middle of the road to safety. And maybe I need to recalibrate and look at some additional or different schools in the second round. So a lot of people spread their applications across. Sometimes people will apply to one set of schools and then in the second round look to sort of almost like go higher, right? They'll apply to even higher ranked schools if they've found great success in the first round, or they'll look to kind of maximize their scholarship packages by adding schools strategically. So just keep all that in mind. I would say that if you belong to what I would call an overrepresented population in the applicant pool, you're obviously better to apply early than late, because again, there's this idea of, you're competing for a finite number of slots. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully this kind of quick tip on round one versus round two is useful. I did want to thank all of you who joined us today. We love doing these events. I love getting together with the schools and asking them these questions. We really hope that the questions we ask are useful. I know that you probably go to other events where schools are just doing more general discussion about their programs, and those are useful too, but we really are trying to provide a kind of laser-like focus on a portion of the application that we know is top of mind right now. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get the links out to you all, both via email and in the chat here. I would recommend you copy and paste them if you can see them on screen when they come up, so that you can, if you want to visit multiple schools, because you can only go to one school at a time, the way Zoom is set up, right? So go to one, go back to the links, you can jump into another room, get your questions answered. And again, thanks so much to everyone for joining us. And please pop by clearadmit.com when you can to join us there as well. We have a lot of great content on the website. So thanks again. And yeah, this is a great event. Really a pleasure to see so many of you joining us today, and best of luck with your applications.